Most people pick an orange the way they pick paint. They look for the brightest color, the smoothest skin, the one that seems to shine under grocery store lights, and they assume that beauty must mean sweetness. Then they get home, cut it open, and find a fruit that looks perfect and eats like damp cardboard. No perfume, no burst, no rich orange juice running over your thumb, just disappointment, and that little quiet feeling that you paid for promise and got almost nothing back. That is why this matters more than people think. When you know how to choose an orange well, you are not just learning how to buy fruit. You are learning how to stop getting fooled by surface. You are learning how to use your own senses again. And for something as ordinary as an orange, that may sound too serious at first, until you realize how many people have forgotten how to judge simple things without a label, a sticker, a brand name, or a sales display doing the thinking for them. There is an older way to do it, not mystical, not complicated, just practical. The kind of produced judgment that came from handling food often enough to know when it was alive with flavor and when it was only wearing the costume. That is the spirit behind this whole idea of picking an orange like the old Amish do. Not because there is some secret handshake over a citrus crate, but because older communities that stayed close to land and markets tended to keep a habit modern buyers often lose. They used their eyes, their hands, their nose, their patience, and their memory. They compared. They noticed. They did not let appearance make the final decision. If you learn a few of those habits, you can walk up to a pile of oranges with a lot more confidence. You can stop hoping and start reading. And once you know what to feel for, you will never look at that fruit bin the same way again. The first thing to understand is this. A sweet, juicy orange is usually carrying more life inside it than a dry one, and your hand can often tell before your knife ever does. That is why the first test is weight. Not giant size, not bright color. Weight. Pick up 2 oranges that look close in size. Hold one in each hand if you can. The one that feels heavier for its size is often the better bet. Why? Because more juice has weight. A fruit that is plump with liquid usually feels more substantial than one that has sat too long, dried down inside, or put too much of its energy into thick peel and empty space. That difference may be small, but once you start paying attention, it becomes surprisingly obvious. This is one of those things a careful buyer learns fast. The orange that feels almost a little dense, almost like it has more tucked inside than its shell suggests, is often the orange that rewards you. The one that feels light and easy, almost hollow in spirit, often does not. Not always. Fruit is still fruit. Nature does not sign contracts. But as a working rule, weight is one of the strongest clues you have, and here is where many people miss the point. They compare a large orange to a small one, and assume the large one must have more juice because it is bigger. That is not the right comparison. You compare weight to size, not weight to your expectations. A smaller orange that feels packed can easily outshine a big handsome one that is all rind and air. That leads to the second sign, and this one matters a lot. Pay attention to the skin, but not in the way people usually do. Smooth and glossy is not the whole story. In fact, sometimes the oranges that look almost too polished are the ones buyers overtrust. What you want is skin that seems close to the fruit, not skin that feels loose, thick, or puffy. Run your fingers over the peel. Does it feel tight to what is underneath, or does it feel like the fruit and the jacket are not on speaking terms anymore? A tight peel often goes with a juicier orange. A loose, airy feel can mean a thicker rind, a fruit that has been sitting longer, or a fruit that simply is not going to give you that rich, dripping bite you hoped for. This does not mean every bumpy orange is bad, and every smooth one is good. It means you are looking for a kind of honest tension in the fruit, a peel that belongs there, a skin that feels connected, not inflated. When the rind feels too separated from the flesh, that is your clue to slow down. Now let us deal with one of the biggest myths in the produce aisle. Color can help, but color can also fool you. A lot of people think a deep orange color automatically means sweet, ripe, and ready. That is easy to believe because it looks right. It fits the picture in your head. But oranges are tricky that way. Depending on variety, weather, and where they were grown, an orange can have some green on the skin and still be perfectly ripe inside. And an orange can be fully orange on the outside and still taste flat. That means if your whole method is color, you are using the weakest witness as your star witness. Color is one clue, nothing more. If an orange has a healthy glow and also passes the weight test and the skin test, good. That adds confidence. But color alone should never win the case. This is where old practical judgment starts to separate itself from modern buying habits. Modern shopping trains people to trust visual perfection because it is fast. But old market wisdom often says the opposite. First notice the surface, then question it. Then check with your hands. Now when you lift the fruit, do one more thing. Give it a gentle press. Not enough to bruise it, just enough to learn something. A good orange should feel firm, but not stubborn like a carved wooden ball. If it is rock hard with no life in it, that can be a warning sign. If it has a slight give, just a little living softness under the peel, that is often a better sign. You are not looking for softness the way you would in a peach. Oranges do not speak that language. You are looking for firmness with generosity. A fruit that holds itself well but does not feel locked up. If it is soft in patches, especially near the bottom or around damaged spots, put it back. That is not sweetness. That is decline. Another thing worth noticing is the texture of the rind itself. Some very coarse, thick-feeling peels can go along with less juice and more pith, especially if the fruit also feels light. Again, no single sign stands alone, but when lightweight, thick feel, and coarse puffiness start showing up together, the message gets clearer. That orange may look decent, but it may eat dry. This is how you build real confidence. Not with one magic trick, with a pattern. You stop hunting for certainty in a single sign and start reading the fruit like a set of clues that either support one another or do not. One of the most overlooked clues is smell. Yes, before you buy it. Bring the orange near your nose, especially around the stem end if the store or stand allows it and the fruit is clean. You may not get much from every orange, especially if it is cold from storage. But sometimes there is a faint perfume there, a living citrus note that tells you the oils are lively and the fruit is not sleeping. If there is absolutely nothing, that is not an automatic rejection. But a sweet, fresh orange scent is never bad news. Then there is the stem end and the navel, if the orange has one. These spots can tell you a lot when you stop rushing. If the stem end is dried out, shrunken, or looking tired, that may suggest age. If the navel on a navel orange looks sound and the whole fruit feels heavy and balanced, that is often a better sign. You are not diagnosing the fruit like a laboratory sample. You are simply reading whether it feels lively or spent. Freshness leaves traces. And here is something else people do that costs them. They fall in love with uniformity. They think a whole pile of same-sized, same-colored oranges means reliability. Sometimes all that means is a good sorting job. The best orange in the bin may not be the prettiest one in the front row. It may be the one a little off to the side that feels heavier, tighter, and more alive when you actually handle it. That brings us to a very useful habit. Never judge the first orange in isolation. Compare several. Even if you only plan to buy 3, handle 6 or 8, not roughly, respectfully, but enough to learn the range in that batch. Once you compare a few from the same display, differences that seemed invisible at first suddenly become clear. One feels lighter, one feels coarse, one feels better knit together. One has that satisfying weight that makes you think, there you are. Now let us talk about sweetness more directly, because juicy is one thing and sweet is another, and people often mix them together. A juicy orange can still be tart. A sweet orange can still be a little dry if it has aged badly. What you want, most of the time, is that good meeting point where sweetness and juice arrive together. And to improve your odds of finding that, it helps to know a little about timing and type. Not every orange is trying to be the same fruit. Navel oranges, for instance, are often the ones people reach for when they want easy peeling, good eating out of hand, and winter sweetness. Valencias are often loved for juice, and can be excellent later in the season. Some smaller oranges can be intensely sweet. Some large ones are mainly pretty. If you know what kind of orange you are looking at, you already have a better idea of what it wants to offer. This matters because people sometimes blame themselves for choosing poorly when they really chose the wrong kind for the job. If you want a rich breakfast orange to peel and eat over the sink, choose for that. If you want a basket for juice, choose for that. Good judgment starts with knowing the purpose. Season matters too. Fruit has a rhythm. Even in a modern store where everything is stacked under the same lights year-round, not every shipment lands with the same character. In the better part of the season, it is easier to find sweetness. Outside that sweet spot, the odds get less friendly. That does not mean there is never a good orange out of season. It means you should become more selective when the season is less naturally in your favor. And if you are buying a whole bag, not just a few loose oranges, you need to get even more alert. Bags are where disappointment multiplies, because now you are not just making one bad choice. You are bringing home 8 or 10 of them. First, look for condensation, mold, or any collapsed fruit hiding near the bottom. One bad orange can spread trouble, and even if it does not, it can tell you that bag has seen too much time and not enough care. Then try to feel several fruits through the mesh or open bag if allowed. Are they consistently heavy? Do they feel fairly even in firmness? Or does the bag seem like a mixed marriage of a few good oranges carrying several tired ones? There is an old practical habit I wish more people kept. Buy a small test amount first when you can, especially if you are at a new store, buying from a new source, or looking at fruit that seems a little uncertain. Bring home 2 or 3, cut them, taste them, learn that source, then go back for more if it proves itself. That is a very different way to shop, and it is a better one. You are not just screening out failure, you are selecting for quality. That means you should ask more from an orange than mere survival. You want it to have heft, you want the peel to feel well fitted, you want firmness with a little give, you want signs of freshness, maybe even a faint smell. You want the fruit to feel like it has been holding itself well, not merely avoiding collapse. Once you begin doing this, something interesting happens. You stop getting dazzled by giant oranges. Big fruit has a way of calling to people because it looks like value, but size and value are cousins, not twins. A large orange can have thick peel, dry segments, and mild flavor. A medium orange with real density can make the big one feel like decoration. Let us talk about blemishes for a moment, because some people throw back perfectly good fruit over marks that have almost nothing to do with eating quality. A scratch on the skin, a patch of wind scuff, a little uneven color. These things may not matter much if the fruit still feels heavy, sound, and tight-skinned. Of course, severe damage is different, but a flawless appearance is not the same as a flawless orange. Here is another practical trick that helps when you are choosing several oranges from the same lot. After you find one that feels especially promising, keep it in your hand for a moment as your benchmark. Then compare the others to that one, not by memory, by direct feel. This makes your judgment sharper immediately. One good orange teaches your hand what to look for in the next. Now, is every sweet orange heavy? No. Is every light orange dry? No. That kind of certainty belongs to people trying to sound smarter than fruit allows. Agriculture is too alive for rigid promises. Weather changes things. Variety changes things. Storage changes things. But practical knowledge does not need perfection to be valuable. It only needs to improve your odds in the real world. You can do the same thing with a bin of oranges this week. Start with the weight, always. If you remember nothing else, remember that. Lift and compare. Let your hand vote first. Then check whether the peel feels close and honest. Not bloated, not loose. Not like a coat borrowed from another fruit. Then look at color, but refuse to worship it. Let it support your judgment, not replace it. Then press lightly, feel for firmness with a hint of give. Life, not mush. Structure, not stiffness. Then notice aroma if it offers itself. Then compare more than one. Then think about season. Then think about what you want that orange to do in your kitchen. That little chain of habits can change your results more than any fancy food advice ever will. There is a kind of freedom in that. That does not mean every label is useless. It does not mean every old way is automatically better. It means you should not surrender your judgment when you do not have to. If a thing can be tested with your hands, tested with your nose, tested with comparison, then start there. That is part of what people really miss when they talk about older practical knowledge. It was not all quaint charm. A lot of it was simply independence at a very small scale. The ability to stand in front of something ordinary and make a decent call without needing a screen, a trend, or a salesman to explain your own dinner to you. And that is worth recovering, because the cost of not recovering it shows up everywhere. It shows up in fruit that gets eaten once and never bought again. It shows up in kitchens full of waste. It shows up in families who stop trusting fresh food because they keep bringing home bland versions of it. It shows up in children who think oranges are just fine, when really they have only ever had mediocre ones. A truly sweet, juicy orange can make a person remember why people have loved simple fruit for generations. A poor one can make the whole thing seem overrated. That is no small difference. When you cut into a good orange, you know almost immediately. The peel releases a bright spray into the air. The segments look full. The knife comes away wet. The flesh has tension but not toughness. And the taste is not just sweet in a sugary way. It has sunlight in it. It has freshness. It wakes up the whole mouth. That experience is ordinary in the best sense. Not flashy, not rare. Just deeply satisfying. The kind of small household pleasure that reminds you good food does not always need a recipe. Sometimes it only needs better choosing, and better choosing is a skill, which means it grows. The first time you try this, maybe you will still get one wrong. Fine. That is part of learning. But if you actually compare, actually feel, actually stop relying only on color, your success rate will climb fast. By the third or fourth trip, you will start reaching for better fruit almost automatically. That is when the habit becomes yours. I think that is the part many people underestimate. They imagine practical knowledge as a list to memorize. But real practical knowledge is usually a relationship between your senses and repeated experience. You notice something, test it, confirm it, store it, and use it again. Over time, your body starts knowing before your words catch up. That is why a person who has picked produce for years can move through a stand with quiet certainty. They are not performing intelligence. They are recognizing patterns their hands have met before. You can build that same kind of pattern memory even if you did not grow up around it. You do not need a farm. You do not need a root cellar. You do not need to turn your life into a museum of old-fashioned virtue. You just need to stop outsourcing simple judgment where simple judgment still works. Pick up the orange, compare it, trust what you learn. And while we are here, let me say one more thing that matters. Do not confuse thrift with settling. Some people hear practical advice like this and turn it into a contest to buy the cheapest thing available. That is not the lesson. The lesson is to get the best value for actual eating quality, not the lowest price at any cost. Sometimes the cheaper orange is the better orange. Sometimes it is not. What matters is whether the fruit earns its place on your table. That is a healthier form of frugality, not deprivation, discernment. The same goes for bulk buying. A sale can be a gift if the fruit is good and you will use it. A sale can also be a box of future disappointment if you buy quantity before you understand quality. Old common sense usually had a simple order. First prove it, then commit. That order alone would save a lot of people money. Now think about the title of this whole idea again. Picking a sweet and juicy orange like the old Amish do. Whether an Amish family ever used the exact same checklist you use is not really the heart of it. The heart of it is the habit beneath the phrase. Slow down. Observe closely. Trust the fruit less by its paint and more by its substance. Let use, not appearance, be your standard. That is an old kind of wisdom, and it travels well. It works at a farm stand. It works in a chain store. It works in your own kitchen when you are deciding what was worth buying and what was not. It even works beyond food, because once you get used to testing ordinary things by what they are really carrying, you become harder to impress and easier to satisfy. That is a good combination. You waste less. You resent less. You enjoy more. And maybe that is why these small skills feel so good to reclaim. They are humble, but they restore something. Not pride in a loud sense, not nostalgia for its own sake. Just a steadier way of moving through daily life. A little less dazzled, a little less passive. A little more able to say, I know how to tell. That sentence matters, especially now, when so many people have been trained to doubt their own senses unless an expert voice confirms them. But sweetness is still tasted in a mouth. Juice is still felt in a hand. Freshness is still noticed by a nose. Some forms of knowledge do not need to be grand to be real. So the next time you are standing there under those bright store lights with a pile of oranges in front of you, do not rush past the moment. Pick up more than one. Feel the difference. Compare size to weight. Notice whether the peel is tight or puffy. Ignore the temptation to let color do all the work. Give the fruit a fair trial before you invite it home. You may be surprised how quickly your results improve. And once they do, you will probably find yourself using this same kind of judgment on other produce too. Melons, tomatoes, peaches, onions. The specific signs change, but the deeper lesson stays the same. The hand that learns to compare becomes wiser than the eye that only glances. That is the kind of knowledge people used to pass around without making a big speech about it. A neighbor mentioned it. A parent modeled it. A careful shopper learned it from repetition. Then it just became part of daily competence. Quiet, useful, reliable. We need more of that again. Not because the world needs to go backward, but because some things are worth bringing forward. The ability to judge simple food well is one of them. It saves money, it cuts waste, it improves meals, and maybe most importantly, it reminds you that ordinary life gets better when you pay attention. So next time you buy oranges, trust the one that feels like it has something to give. The one with real heft. The one whose peel fits close. The one that seems less interested in impressing from a distance and more capable of rewarding you at the table. That is usually the better orange. And I would genuinely love to know this from you. When you pick oranges, what is the first sign you trust most? Weight, smell, peel texture, color, or something your family always looked for? There is a good chance people watching have their own little rules that work where they live, and those kinds of local habits are often as valuable as any formal advice. Because in the end, this is how practical knowledge stays alive. Not locked in a book somewhere, not polished into a slogan. Shared, tested, argued over a little, then proven again in real kitchens and real stores, by people who care what comes home in the bag. And once you start choosing oranges this way, do not be surprised if the next question naturally follows. If this much quality can hide behind a simple peel, what else have we been overlooking in the foods we buy every week?